Yeah, no, it's, I will, yeah, it's pretty incredible.
I can't
I
join.
will claim her.
Why do you say that to me, you little friggin' Episcopalian? I will, but luckily I've never changed.
Yeah.
Always been, that's why I was in the Marines. Short with a chip on my shoulder going, come on. You're Mr. Consistent. Always have been.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Son Destin or something like that.
We do it. I was listening American, but was in Peru. He was speaking in Spanish. I was
Something
listening
like that. Yeah, yeah. It's like how I
in
grew up.
Italian. Did not speak in English. And I got to thinking that's a good choice because when you want to run an organ, it's like if you're asked to be on a board of directors, it's just what can you bring to the organization? Like if you're asked to be on the Red Cross board of directors,
I know, you're like, wait, hold on a second.
the support. And I'm thinking, good choice.
Yeah, you know, there's always,
South
people are always so
America,
shocked too because
America's
I have the same
here. I mean,
mannerisms, but we don't necessarily
business-wise,
look alike, and more because I'm tall.
I finally looked up
She's
the
not.
other day.
I appreciate everything.
Everybody wants to start finding their seats. We're going to get started.
I got a Baton Rouge to get to.
All right, I want to call to order the meeting of the Walton County Tourist Development Council. A couple of things I would like to remind the group of. We do have a hard stop today at 2:30 due to a meeting following us. And we also are having a county-wide internet issue. A support ticket is in, but we do not know that that will be resolved, allowing this meeting to be streamed. So if we could ask Brian to please do our prayer and pledge.
Does that mean we have a free-for-all for not being live streamed? Just kidding. May the Lord be with you. Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for the opportunity to live and work in one of your most wondrous creations. Watch over and guide us as we conduct the business of tourism in Walton County. Help us to see through the eyes of all the people we represent. And please give us the understanding of all the issues and the humility to make the best decisions for all concerned. And as always, help us to treat everybody with patience and fairness and kindness. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Just in time. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we do have a quorum with six of our members present today. Are there any public comments? Do we take public comment now before we start agenda items? Any public comment on any of the items on the agenda? Ms. Harris?
As a bed tax collector, I hope that y'all will decide to move all the important items like Tiffany's treasurer's report and the golf course to the front and postpone the TDC items that they talk about that we get all the slides from. Those can be sent to us if we run out of time. But there's some really important things on this agenda that I think need to be discussed, and I hope somebody will make a motion and it'll get a second to move up the financials and the golf course and the golf tournament and the thing we're paying for, to get those to the front of the agenda and leave the others to the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to move the director's updates to the end of the agenda?
I'd make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we will move those items to the bottom of the agenda. As stated, you do have printouts in your packets, or the council members do, but hopefully we'll be very efficient today and we'll make it all the way to those. All right, so do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the April 1st meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Moving right along to our financial report, and thank you.
Okay. Yeah, does somebody? I can. All right. Good afternoon, council members. Summer Alford from the Office of Management and Budget. For the month of February, TDT expenditures amounted to $4,051,891.
We have it.
Okay. I wasn't sure what I was on. So. Okay, looking at the budget report, you will see the year-to-date actual expenditures, which totaled $22,235,123. Moving on to revenue, for the month of February, total TDT collections amounted to $1,364,064. Total revenue for the month, including interest and collections, is $1,900,906. TDT collections for the South Walton District for the current year equaled $9,589,545. This represents a decrease of 8.3% when compared to the prior year. TDT collections for the North Walton District for this year equaled $76,849. When compared at a 2% rate, this represents a 10.1% decrease when compared to the prior year. Looking at reserves, the reserves for the period amount to $144,459,426. We've added this, oh, there was another slide. You would see on the other slide, I don't know if it's in your presentation or not, but after the projects, encumbrances, and beach renourishment, the reserve balance would be $50,505,161. I now respectfully request the approval of the financial reports.
Summer, just one quick question. Do we have March TDT collection figures yet?
We do not.
Okay, cool.
I'll make that motion to approve the financials.
Second.
Aye.
Okay.
I would, in response to this, and I have a few things just as it relates to a treasurer that I'd like to talk about for the budget that I was hoping that maybe I could move to this point in time and be brief to just chat through, in knowing that we're going to be looking at the budget in June. If y'all would, I don't know if I need to make a motion to move that agenda item to now. Yes. Okay. So I would make a motion to move my budget agenda item to now.
The council needs to allow her to address this at this time, if that's what you want to do. You can't second, but we need someone else to. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Tiffany, we'll give you the floor.
Thank you. So I want to, in the interim from last meeting to now, I want to thank the budget team, Summer and Devin. They met with me a couple weeks ago in Matt's office, as y'all were so gracious to allow me to be the treasurer position. I have, part of my responsibility is to sign off on EALs each week for beach operations and then for the TDC. And I noticed a few things, and I just wanted to make sure I brought it to everyone's attention, but I also want to make sure that we're, as a TDC council, very aware our mission is to make sure that we approve some of these expenditures in general, but also when we set the budget in June, that we're doing so and taking a lot of time, especially as it relates to the decrease of 8%. So some of those things, as we look at, or as I've looked at the last budget, and again, I was not here when the budget was placed forward last year. And I, all of the budget isn't completely line itemed out, but I did notice some things that brought some concerns. And one of that is, and we've mentioned it several times in our meetings, Tim's mentioned some of it, I think, in the first meeting I attended, due to some travel costs and also some of our sponsorships for local items. one of the things that first flagged, and I mentioned this in our in our meeting, and Summer was so gracious to say that anything that we needed, she'd be able to report and provide to us weekly, monthly. So I'm really calling everyone to action to think of what they would need for these numbers. But we have a couple items as it relates to each department that are specific to sponsorships, mostly for chamber events. And we're signing off on a lot of items, and I think the chamber is so fantastic. But we've spent $98,000 in the last since 2020. Of this year alone, we've already spent 50% of what we spent last year with the Walton County Chamber. I get very concerned since these are somewhat in buckets, and because this is something that was brought to my attention, I just don't know what else is within these budgets, and I think that it is our due diligence to make sure we see what all these expenses are. Tim, you had mentioned in a previous meeting that we had some travel expenses. And when we look at year over year, and this is what I think we really need to call to action for us as council members to review, since we are down, our travel budget for each side. So our administration, we increased the budget by 7%, but our travel, they only utilized 19% last year. So, there's some other items where it relates to that. I'm not saying that any of this is not necessary. But I would like to talk through what we'd like to see so that Summer and her team can pull things together so that we can make accurate, and responsible and efficient decisions and work with everyone in the department based on their needs. Because June is coming quickly and we're going to have to make some of those budgets. So I just wanted to bring some of those things to attention. And those are really more so of what's been brought up by the council in meetings and then what I've seen through the EALs that I've wanted to dig a little deeper into. So sorry, I apologize, I turned that off. So we have the budget, I have the budget right here. And what we have is kind of some groupings of items, but I'm not sure exactly what what the clarification is for what we pull exactly from those items. So, as it relates to some of the chamber, so we've got something that's annual meeting, job fair, Chamber of Commerce sponsorships, local event sponsorships, industry events, $170,000. But I don't know exactly what specifically is being pulled from that. And so when we have it, they're a little bit larger buckets, I would say. And so I think one of the best ways to maybe look at that is, and I'm open to any suggestion, but for all of us to maybe review some of these budget items, and then where we have questions, ask those specific questions and then bring them up, because I don't know how much time will we have in the June meeting to review our budget.
Excuse me, we shouldn't have any conflicts for the June meeting. It was because we moved this meeting, which is why we kind of had the time conflict with another meeting backed against us, so that shouldn't be an issue for June.
Okay.
So in June, what is our required approval date? That meeting will have to be the meeting to move it forward, I'm assuming, to the BCC?
I would think so, yes.
Okay.
I mean, when you approve it, it'll be on the next BCC agenda. So your meeting being, just as a practical matter, your meeting being the first Tuesday, there being the second Tuesday, whenever it's held, it's gonna go to the next BCC agenda. Now, if you ever feel like you need more time, we feel like we need a standalone meeting to do some of these issues, that's certainly appropriate if the council wants to call that.
I was about to. Do we think a budget workshop would be in order?
Yeah, I would agree, especially when we're looking at reserves and really looking at return on investments and putting money in, some good places. I think there's opportunity as we look at the budget to see, and I would ask to see where we haven't spent money so that we can lower the budget in some of those areas so that we have more cash flow for where it's needed.
Okay. No, I think that makes perfect sense. So,
Chairman,
yes.
I don't recall, I haven't been on the board that long, that we've ever had the opportunity, a budget's been presented. You've heard me say over and over, it's not really a budget. If they know 60 million's coming in, guess what's being spent? 60 million. It's a grant. I've never had, as a member of this committee, the opportunity to look at a budget, to redline a budget, to question why spend it all just because it's in the pie chart. Why travel? We have the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America right here. We have restaurants right here. Pretty much most of the United States knows we're here. So I've always had a lot of issues, but it always comes back, well, it's that pie chart and the money comes in and we need to spend it all. Well, I would love to see if we're allowed by the county commissioners where this actual board gets a chance to redline and look and say, why? Why are we doing this? Why are we going there? Let's not spend it. Let's put it in a rainy day fund. Thank you.
Sure.
Year that I've been here, we've taken an opportunity to meet with council members individually. I've met with you individually prior to the meeting where we discuss it publicly, where we go through it by line item by line item.
Go through it, but that doesn't mean I can go through it and take line items out on this as a board member. You just show it to us.
No, but what the opportunity is for you to understand it before the public meeting.
I understand,
And then
but
at
I'd
that
like
public,
the opportunity to do more.
yeah.
Is say, let's not spend this much, or let's get new trucks, or let's not get new trucks. Or
No,
let's
I'm
not
not, I understand that. I'm just trying to make the difference between
So the
not having
difference has always
opportunity.
been, everyone has gotten a chance to see the budget that this organization puts together.
Mhm.
But it's like when I say we're nothing but marionettes up here. We don't have the opportunity to actually make a budget for the tourist.
Well, I think you do. I mean, I don't want to get,
I'm glad. 'Cause
I
in
don't wanna
16
get
weeks
contentious.
Coming in, if you really think that we as a group can write the budget, we'll write the budget. If you think this organization, if we have that authority, I don't think we have that authority.
you do. You're the council. You have the authority to make recommendation to the thing.
We need a budget workshop before we approve a budget.
And I think thank you very much, Brian. I think that, and then, was there anything else you had?
No, I just want to comment.
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair, and I
as a-
think a lot of our transition that we're going through is, we had that right the entire time. I think there might have been councils that didn't know to ask, that it didn't express maybe that they wanted to do that deeper dive. That's what I think may have happened, but I certainly know that the opportunity, and I've been up here, I think, long enough to have pushed one forward to the BCC, and I can't sit here and say that I asked for a budget workshop, but Tiffany, with the great work you've done as the treasurer, I think you clearly feel that's appropriate, and I support that fully.
Yeah.
And I'll say too, if I can, the intent is not to overhaul a complete budget. I want to make sure everyone has what they need, but I also want to make sure we reallocate, because when I see these numbers going down, and I'll say I'm completely mirroring what we're doing in our businesses, because we're having to really make those differences and changes, but I want to make sure that we're supportive of y'all and what's needed
Right,
for your
and
teams.
we, as directors and deputy directors of the tourism department, fully expect y'all to engage with us like we will engage with you. It doesn't hurt our feelings when you want to discuss the numbers we put forth at all.
Sure.
On the issue of spending the money that comes in, as with all taxing entities, if you're not spending the tax you're taking in, you should take steps to reduce that tax, not put it in reserves. I mean, we do put money in reserves for certain things, either unanticipated revenue or unspent revenue.
Then are you saying if we get a budget workshop and we get to really get into all this and all the departments and what you do and where you go, we might be able to recommend a $45 million budget and then rebate 15 million back to the tax
No, I'm not saying
collectors?
that at all. I said,
You could do the first half, you could not do the back half. It's outside of this board of the county's purview to rebate those taxes.
right.
But my other question for that though would be so Clay, you probably know this. We don't collect. We utilize of our budget 26% towards marketing. Is that correct?
I think it was 24.
24%.
27%, depending on the,
By state statute, what are we maxed out to be allowed to spend percentage wise?
100%. You can spend the money however you see fit. There is no state statutory requirements. There are no pie charts or percentages that dictate what you have to do. The only percentage that comes to marketing is if Walton County chose to use any of the TDT for public facilities in terms of capital improvement projects, roadways, water, wastewater, garbage collection, other types of infrastructure projects. To do that, there's a list of factors that have to be met, and one of those is 40% of your budget must go to marketing. If you don't do that, you are ineligible to use it on those capital improvement projects. Accordingly, there is no limit on how little or how much you can choose to spend. It's what you choose to recommend and the board approves. If you want to spend every bit of $60 million on marketing, do it. If you spent zero on marketing, I will say that's where we're getting into a theoretical question of how are you going to justify your other expenditures? I mean, there's only so many things we can use this money on, and if zero goes to marketing, I guess you could do it. I'm not sure anybody in the state's able to do it.
We don't want to do that.
40% of the 60 million, or can it be 40% if a budget committee says, I think we can do all this on 40 million? Then
Okay,
40%
let's be clear. You're not required to spend 40%, period. You are not, the statute does not require you to do it. It is only if we are taking the opportunity to spend this money on public infrastructure projects to benefit tourism, which we are not doing. The county is nowhere close to doing that. The county has never, by a 2/3 vote, made the recommendation. The county's never allocated 30% of general fund revenues or other revenues to match the TDC money. And most importantly, and most critically, there has never been an independent professional study done to justify any specific public facilities project. Paving roads, garbage collection, water, sewer, et cetera, that will satisfy the state statute. There is no statutory percentages in 125.0104 that apply to us whatsoever with regard to your ability to set your budget. You want to spend 0% to 100% of $60 million, you can do that. And I think I understand what your ultimate question there is. If you wanted to say, I want to spend $8 million of $60 million on marketing, you can do that. Now, if you only spend $30 million, that is a much greater percentage. That $8 million is a much greater percentage, but that's not a statutory regulation. And even if we were trying to get into that statute, and I see no way we ever do, it is on the amount budgeted of the total collections. So, I mean, that can be adjusted, but ultimately, guys, there's not a state statutory limit on y'all. Y'all set the budget. And if you only want to spend $40 million, Mr. Taylor, that's up to you. I want to be clear about this. When Mr. Cutshaw was the TDC director, one of the changes he made after meeting with numerous other TDCs around the state was the ordinance plan had, and it had been done in a lot of different ways, but the one he inherited basically said this bucket will have between 8 and 12 million. This bucket will have between 20 and 30 million. And so we did these. These were self-imposed restrictions we imposed. The problem was, if you say that and you have a banner year and you have a 40% increase in revenue and everybody's thrilled, well, you're still stuck under that upper cap and you're still limited by that bottom cap. The worst case scenario is you have a bad year, which Mr. Cutshaw did come into on the heels of COVID. He got here in 21 is when he was appointed. So after that, while we were having stellar years, we were looking at everywhere else that was having a lot more problems. And what happens if we fall back off? Well, if you say we're going to spend between $8 and $12 million and you don't have the money to spend, well, now you've got to go back through an ordinance amendment process and plan amendment process that is not easy or timely. So the decision was made to change in the ordinance dollar amounts that were fixed dollar amounts to percentages. And that only happened in 21-22 era. So when that happened, and those percentages are imposed by the ones of you sitting up there and adopted by the board. And that is allowing you a tool to say, we'll spend between this range, this bracket, 8% to 12%, not 8 million to 12 million. And I'm not saying anything falls in that range. I'm just pointing out that's what we chose to do. You set the percentages of how much of our budget we spend. But if you want to set a budgetary cap that we will only spend $45 million, you still are gonna have to figure out what you do with the other 15 million that comes in out of 60. But you can say, we're gonna spend this percentage, but off the top, we're gonna put money in reserves. You can make that decision. That's your discretion.
Counselor, what about the 40% for marketing? If you're a Sandestin resort, we can keep marketing this area, and they have plenty of parking, watercolor, water sound, seaside. Keep bringing them in, because they have a place to park. What about all the people staying here that don't have a place to park on the beach? We have very limited parking, where that 40% in marketing, if we're gonna keep spending the money to bring them here, then we need to spend the money to have parking garages on 38 so people
If
can
you wish to
access
do
the
that,
water.
Mr. Taylor, you can do it, but you're gonna first off have to go to 40% marketing. We're gonna have to,
But can that marketing money be used to house the people that we're trying to bring here
No.
where they have parking
no,
places?
sir.
Okay,
That's not what marketing and promotion is.
bringing them in and hope they can find a place to park and go to the beach.
And it is 40% of
that
all
money.
tax revenues collected. So if you collect 60 million, you gotta spend 24 million to promote and advertise tourism if you wanna spend money to build parking garages or roads.
Do you know of any other location that spends up to that 40%?
I've never looked at that. I can say when this statute first went into effect over the next 2 years, we looked at quite a few of them, and everyone we were finding that was even trying to do it was never even getting into the 40% analysis. There probably are, in all candor. They were all running into a roadblock on the independent professional analysis. I think some of you have heard me give this statement before. This comes on the heels and within the same window of time that Visit Florida was under the utmost scrutiny of the state. I think most of our industry partners remember the Pitbull concert in Miami that had a pile of money spent on it and drew a lot of attention. Well, one of the comments made was, well, you can get anybody to dress up an analysis that shows ROI after the fact. So when they talked about this is part of the legislative history. Independent professional. And the question was, what's independent? You ask DOR, you go ask the state of Florida, their answer. You go ask Speaker Corcoran, who was involved heavily during all this time, his position would be independent better be they have no connection to your county, to your tourism industry, and certainly no connection to the public infrastructure projects you're choosing to do. Most counties that have been met with that, their response to us at the time was, we have no way of accomplishing this, because if we go hire a firm out of New York and California to try to put this together, it's a disaster. And so most fail there. Candidly, there probably are non-high tourism impact counties in this state that can meet that threshold. We are a high tourism impact county, and when we first were designated, I can tell you this bill going through, we talked to the lobbyist, we were told that no high tourism impact county was able to meet this number. Now, 2 got added within a very short period of time right after that. We got added right around that time. I have not looked that up in 7 years.
That's okay. I didn't know if maybe it had been a more of a rural location, but thank you.
On? No, I'm on. So I certainly think, I am not of the appetite to spend 40% of our budget on marketing. I don't think that's remotely realistic. Having said that, I do think, I'm less worried about where people are going to park right now, and then look at the numbers and the fellow operators I'm talking to up and down 30A. I'm much more concerned with the core functionality of what I believe the Walton County Tourism Department to be, and we've got to make sure we're getting people here. That is what these bed tax dollars are for, and certainly to promote their experience and all of the great work Brian and his team does. But do I think a budget workshop is appropriate? 100%. I want to understand some of these expenditures better, like code enforcement, like what we give to the sheriff's office. I think we as a council, it's critical that we understand what these dollars are being used for. So can I get a motion to instruct staff to please coordinate a budget workshop?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. And we'll be moving along to Jennifer Adams to talk about the USS United States.
My on? There we go. Thank you, Madam Chair, council members. I'm Jennifer Adams. I'm the tourism director for Okaloosa County, right next door. I know that last meeting you had some discussion on the SS United States. I just wanted to take a brief minute just to put some more information on the table that I don't know was readily available for your consideration. I have no ask today. It's just information. So here's the vessel description. She is 990 feet. She's larger than the Titanic. She is in Mobile right now. I'm not going to go through all of these because you can see, and she is under remediation so that she can be deployed into our network of more than 570 reefs in our county, and she will be the largest reef in the United States. So between the Oriskany in Pensacola and her, she will be part of the two biggest reefs in the nation. She was retired in 1969. Originally, she was built to be a vessel that brought troops across the transatlantic, and she still holds the fastest time from New York to the UK. She was decommissioned after she was turned into an ocean liner, and someone tried to make her into a hotel, and that didn't work. So then she was docked back in Philadelphia for about 30 years. The SS United States Conservancy purchased her in 2011. They ran out of money. She couldn't stay in Philadelphia, so through a court order, she was either going to be scrapped or sold. So, and that's all right there. So we started following this in 2022, and ultimately we purchased her in October. We did not want to be a part of a conflict with the pier. So she is, we hired a contractor in early August. We've been put through the ringer with the Coast Guard and every other United States entity that we could, but we did all we were supposed to do. Alex could have talked more eloquently about this, but he couldn't make it today. But she is sound right now, and she is in Mobile. So what does it cost? Well, our loose cost is that it is a $10 million purchase. We have purchased her already. She's been moved, she's towed, she's under remediation. We have several people who have asked to sponsor her with us. I did budget for the full cost, but hoping that there'll be more partnerships, especially throughout Northwest Florida. It's not easy to move a 1,000-foot vessel from Philadelphia into the Gulf, but we did it. Here was her route. I don't know if any of you followed, but we got quite a bit of exposure because we had cameras on her. She did very, very well. And just the amount of, once we got her under the bridge in Philadelphia, which she had a 10-foot clearance, and I held my breath, but she did great. She's now in Mobile, getting ready for her final. And you can see that we are pulling off a lot of the artifacts, working with the Coast Guard to be sure how we can deploy those, whether underwater or in a museum that the SS Conservancy, United States Conservancy, will work with us on. Here she was during her voyage. Pretty interesting picture, but she got here a couple months late, but just in time. You can see here, this is the promenade deck, some of the remediation that we're doing. We have done several tests to monitor lead, to monitor the flooring, to monitor any oil that's in the belly. And they're all part of the captain of the port order. And we have followed all that. And you can even see her from I-10 when driving through Mobile. So every week we're on the ship. My team, I have a team of 8 marine biologists in the TDC, and so someone is always over there once a week going through the progress of how we're doing this, so when she is deployed, that she does not hurt the environment, and that our fisheries can thrive. In fact, Melinda is a big part of that, working with Alex, as they work on many, many projects together. But the goal is she will not go under until she is perfectly cleared and inspected appropriately. She's always been part of our 5-year plan. We had a plan. We have 2 more years left on it for deployment. We have just deployed in the last 2 weeks, 2 vessels. We have 5 more that will be deployed, and then she will go down. So this is something that, again, Melinda knows all this, that we're working to identify and do as much as we can. Diving is extremely popular since COVID. The amount of people that come and want to come, even journalists who dive want to come. So we feel like we're being good stewards. Our mission in Okaloosa County is to get kids outside on the water, and that's what we're doing here. Less about just sitting on the beach and being on your device, but always being on the water. These are 3 possible sites where we could deploy her. The deep stem that we deployed with you in Bay County is closer up to the top right, the bubble on the right. So it would be even more of an excursion to have some joint partnerships. And then we know that just when she's deployed, she will add $3 to $5 million worth of economic impact. We will be starting a complete economic impact for diving, fishing, and everything water-based. The land-based museum is going to be amazing. She will, the Conservancy, again, has saved some of these artifacts. They're beautiful. And so that's part of the educational component of the artificial reef projects that we have in Okaloosa County. And we've been approached from IMAX to a bunch of other documentary filmmakers that want to document all this. And then, I think I'd like to do an IMAX film. That'd be pretty good for us for long term and keep her up in the museum. Okay, so this is just, for us, this is really exciting. So we've had a tremendous amount of exposure from her, and all unpaid, except for when we had to travel to Philadelphia to do some of this, the media. To date, since October 1st, 2024, the SS United States has garnered an advertising equivalency of $326 million, a potential editorial reach of $31.5 billion, and a total reach of $68.5 billion. That's when you look up the SS United States. When you look up the SS United States in Destin-Fort, Walton Beach, we've had an advertising equivalency of $210 million, a potential editorial reach of $22.6 billion, and a social media reach of $63.9 million. So I have done no advertising for her. Our website stats are up. People are interested in this. When we travel, it's all people talk about. And I just wanted to give you some facts and answer any questions that you may have. Melinda, did I miss anything? Okay. And then let you know as you make your decision moving forward. So again, I can answer any questions you have. We good? Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Jennifer. Certainly an enormous amount of work, very impressive, and we will discuss it further.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, is Miss Erin Dinkle in the room? She'll be coming up on behalf of Downs and St. Germain.
Is that better? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm going to be going over 2 studies today. The first one is one we've already conducted for the ROI study. And the second one is going to be for a potential study that, Brian, you have brought up previously about looking into visitors who may not have returned after trips to the area. So we're going to talk about both of them. I'm going to start with the ROI study that we just completed. All right, so as a reminder, the purpose of this ROI study is to take a look at the advertising spend from Walton County Tourism and how much money is coming back to Walton County government from visitors, and see what that return on that advertising investment is. Before I get into all of the calculations for this, I do want to talk a little bit about the differences in an ROI calculation for destinations versus traditional types of sales where you might calculate the ROI. Destination marketing functions a little bit differently because it's an intangible product as opposed to other types of sales like retail where you do get a physical product. So these differences can fall into the fact that with advertising spent for a tangible product, it's a lot easier to measure that in terms of if you put out an ad, did someone go and purchase that product? And with ads online, on social media, or on different websites, there's usually a very quick return. If you put an ad out for a pair of shoes, for example, someone could easily click and purchase those pair of shoes immediately, or at the very least put it in their shopping cart and make a decision in a relatively short time frame. Destination decisions take a lot longer, and there's really an extended decision-making process. So that's where the difference comes in here, is typically when someone sees an ad for a destination, whether they are inspired and decide in that moment, I do want to take a vacation there, there's a lot of other factors to consider with that decision. They may not be able to book that trip the seconds they see the ad. They may need to consider the time off from work. They may need to consider saving up for it. If they have children in school, is there a school break? There's a number of different factors for that. Perhaps they already have a vacation planned for that year and need to wait for the next year to go to that trip that they just saw some information for. So there's really this extended decision-making process. And in addition to that, having that information for the ads help to inspire the trip and help to keep it top of mind for when they are in the place to make that decision and actually book that trip. So those are just a few factors I just wanted to go over, since it does function a little bit differently, as it is a longer kind of planning process when it comes to destinations. So with that, I guess I was a little bit ahead of myself. With that, what we found is that there is a return on investment of $15.17. So what that means is for every dollar Walton County tourism spends in advertising, there is a return to Walton County government from visitors of $15.17. So I'll walk you through a little bit of how we came to that figure. And there's a few sources we used for this calculation. The first one is we have our visitor tracking study that we conduct on an annual basis where we survey visitors. And from this study, we're able to ascertain why visitors are coming and their recall of advertising prior to their visit. In addition to that, we also want to consider the fact that Walton County Tourism isn't the only entity here putting out advertising. There are many individual organizations who are putting out their own advertising efforts to help attract visitors to the area. So it really is a combined effort. And what we're trying to understand here is how much of that combined effort is attributable to Walton County Tourism. So for that piece, we actually surveyed partners throughout the county to understand how much they spend in advertising outside of the market with the purpose of trying to bring in visitors. Compared that to the advertising budget with Walton County Tourism. And we found that Walton County Tourism accounts for nearly 58% of all the advertising that's spent for the county. So, having that in mind, we go through 3 steps to calculate the ROI. The first one is understanding how much money comes to the community from visitors that is attributable to the marketing efforts, and then taking a look at how much is actually spent on marketing and plugging that into our final ROI formula. Sorry, I'm a little bit behind on the slide transitions here. There we go. So with that first step, we want to look at that extra money that's coming from visitors. So by looking at the Walton County budget, we can see all of the revenue that's coming in from all sources. So that's visitors as well as residents. So we have our Walton County budget. Now, from the visitor tracking studies that we do, we're able to estimate how much of those revenues are coming from visitors. In the visitor tracking study, we understand how much money is being spent from visitors on an annual basis, and we're also able to understand exactly how much tax dollars they're contributing through their retail purchases, through their stay at accommodations, and other purchases as well. So we've estimated that visitors account for about 76% of those tax revenues that are coming into the Walton County budget. And we're able to then determine that about $241 million of Walton County revenue is coming from tourists. So from there, we want to understand how much of that 241 million that's coming from tourists is attributable to marketing, and how much of that marketing was the reason they came and spent their money here. And we've divided visitors up into two different groups. There are those who are directly influenced from the marketing efforts to take a trip here, and without marketing wouldn't have decided to come here. And there are those who are more brand supported with the marketing efforts. And I'll get into that in just a moment. So the reason we have this differentiation is because there are some visitors who, as I mentioned, they're directly influenced from the marketing. They see an ad, they decide that place looks gorgeous, I want to take a trip there, and they start that planning process. And then there are those who, where the marketing is brand supporting that decision to take the trip. Some examples of these would be those who are visiting friends and relatives that already live here. There are return visitors who have come more than 10 times. Maybe they come here every single year for an annual vacation, and they know that they're going to do this all the time. But there's a couple things I want to note here. Even those returning visitors, and even though they have an annual routine to come here every year, there is an opportunity each year for them to decide to go to a different destination this time. There are numerous destinations across the world that are putting out the same advertising efforts, trying to get these same visitors to come to their destination. And while a visitor may be coming for 10 years in a row, there's an opportunity each year for them to decide, let's try someplace new this year. That's why marketing does have an impact on those previous visitors. The third factor is those who are coming to attend a business meeting or a conference. While that individual attendee or visitor may not have seen an ad before they came here, they simply knew their association's meeting is going to be in Walton County this year. They booked their trip, and that's all there is to it. However, the meeting planner for that conference has been spoken to by the Walton County tourism team. You'll see when Karen does her updates about all the appointments she has at different events where she's speaking with meeting planners, that helps to influence that decision to hold a meeting here or a conference here and bring in all of those attendees. So with these different aspects, we don't want to give full credit to the advertising, but there's definitely an amount of credit where that advertising is really crucial, or the efforts of the Walton County tourism team is really crucial to bring in those types of visitors. So we give a full credit to those who are directly influenced by marketing, and a partial credit to those who are more supported by the marketing efforts to really solidify that decision. So with that, we take all of that information, we plug it right back into our ROI formula. We know that about 16% are directly influenced by Walton County tourism advertising, and about 28% it has that brand supported influence from Walton County tourism advertising, ultimately summing to 45% of visitors being influenced to some extent from Walton County tourism advertising. So now that we have that 45%, we can take that and multiply it by the tourism revenue that we found earlier, that 241 million, and find that 108.4 million of Walton County government revenue is attributed to visitors who are influenced to some extent by advertising. So that was a lot more formulas than I typically like to put in a short presentation. So before I go into that next study, I want to pause here and see if there are any questions. None right now? Okay. Well, if you do think of some later on, we're always happy to talk through this in more depth as well. So with that, I will move on to this potential non-return visitor study. So this was brought up, I believe, Brian, this was your idea that you were really speaking on. I think it's a really interesting study to actually take a look at some of these visitors who've come to the area and have decided potentially not to return, and explore what those reasons may be, and especially diving into the difference between if it's just a first-time visitor who tried out the area Maybe they loved it and just like to try new areas. Maybe they tried it for the first time and had a bad experience and didn't want to return. But there's also those previous visitors that have come year after year. And if they decided to then try out a different destination, was it because this last trip didn't live up to their expectations? Were there external factors? What kind of factors were going into that decision-making process? And for those factors, are they ones that can be looked at with actionable strategies from Walton County Tourism, or are they external ones that are out of Walton County Tourism's hands? So this is really an exploratory study to understand for those who may not return as to the reasons why. Now, this is a really unique group of visitors that we would be trying to talk to and really understand those experiences. For that reason, we recommend the data collection be done with the help of partner participation. And by this, I mean reaching out to the previous guest from bed tax collectors and other entities that have contact information from guests who have come previously. In this way, we can make sure that they're really targeting the past visitor that we want to speak to and actually get to understand their experiences. So with this partner participation, this isn't new to a lot of the research we do in Walton County or in other destinations we work with. In fact, there are many partners who participate in our visitor tracking study with the same method, but I wanted to kind of go over those two methods today. The first one with partner participation is where the partner could share their guest list in an anonymous form with us. Their contact information would remain completely confidential and would only be used for the sole purpose of this study and for nothing further. In this way, we could send the survey link out to those past visitors and have them complete the survey. We would also offer a gift card incentive to the visitor just to encourage that participation. The second method would be to have us create a unique survey link that we can provide the partner for them to send out themselves, and that way they don't have to share any email contact lists with us. Now, there is a little bit more of a responsibility on the partner in that case to send out that email and some follow-up reminders, but that option is often one that many partners feel more comfortable with as well. From our perspective, both options are perfectly fine. We can mix and match. It's totally up to the partner what they're most comfortable with. But ultimately, I wanted to speak on this today just to discuss this project a little bit further and really just emphasize that because of the unique visitor that we're trying to reach here, that partner participation is really going to be pivotal to the success of the study. So I do think it's a really interesting study to take a look at those visitors who haven't returned and understand why and if there are areas for improvement. But I wanted to bring this up today so we could talk about it further. And Brian, I don't know if I want to put you on the spot, but if there's anything you want to add to the study.
I'm excited to be talking about it. As you know, it's something I've been passionate about, I guess, for the last 2.5, 3 years now since I started serving on the council. It's something that we see anecdotally in our private business all the time. And we have a little more of a connection with a lot of our guests, and it's easier to have some of these conversations. But we're seeing the same things that we know about our guests, right? You know, the pain points are, crowding, traffic. We've had some bad PR over the last couple of years with beach access and spring break. And price, right? Price is becoming more and more often one that we're seeing. And I think we have a good grasp on the guests that do choose to return year over year. I think the studies that you've been doing, what you just shared, is fantastic. But I don't think we totally understand from an objective standpoint why people are choosing other destinations, right? And that's things that we're seeing over and over again. We're talking to guests that have come for years. We say, hey, Mr. Smith, you're not coming back. Why is that? Well, we've chosen to go to Navarre this year, or whatever it happens to be. So I think there are opportunities there, not just with ways that we can direct our marketing, but also ways that we can start to maybe kind of counter some of the negative PR that the area's experienced over the last couple of years. Sometimes perception's reality, right? Some of the issues that are out there are not as bad as everybody thinks they are, but it may take an intentional effort on our part to help people understand the reality of what's going on down here. It's not as bad as you think. So I think understanding these things will help us get a better grasp on either remarketing to these people, right, recapturing some of these guests, or helping position our perception into the marketplace where it aligns with reality. So I think it's important, something I've been passionate about from day one.
Thank you, Brian. Do you have an idea for us on what this study would cost?
Yes, so this study would cost about $30,000, not including the gift card incentive we think would be helpful to offer to the visitors who complete the survey. If we did include a $5 gift card for each person who completes the survey for the optimum amount of responses, that would bring us up to about $34,000.
Thank you for putting this together. Typically, what do you see the range of partner participation in a study like this that you've, outside of this area? And then typically, what do you see in this area for partner participation?
So partner participation in this area is actually really good for the visitor tracking studies. There's a lot of partners who work with us, just where quarterly we ask them to share their guest list. That helps contribute to our visitor tracking study. And from that particular study, we had the best partner participation from this destination compared to others. Other places, it really is totally dependent. It varies from each destination. I would say partner participation usually is best when they have a familiarity and a good connection with their DMO. If there are partners who may be less familiar, that's where it's a little bit more of a multiple conversations to get their participation. So ultimately, it varies quite widely between destinations. But I will say that in every single destination we currently work with, we do have at least 1 to 2 partners to work with us consistently. Some are more like here, some are a little bit less, but it varies.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand in terms of all the operators that we have here, what our sample size would essentially be. If we only have just a couple of operators that are designated into a specific type of accommodations, we may not be getting the same type of information, or they're a different demographic or so just wanted to be clear on that. And then the other thing that I have, would this include group sales? Because I think that's also an important understanding of people coming back and that component for marketing and group sales.
It certainly could if there was a form of contact for those from group sales. We certainly could include them as well. I think just your comment before about kind of the diversity of different attractions or accommodations or partners who do participate, we definitely would recommend having multiple partners participate. If we were to have just one partner participate, we are exclusively looking at their guests. So it'd be good to have a variety of partners participate so that we can get a breadth of all the visitors who are coming to the area.
Do we incentivize any of our partners to participate, or just incentivize our?
We haven't in the past, but that is something we could discuss.
I don't mean monetarily, I mean more so like reporting or.
So actually, for the annual studies, we do incentivize with a custom kind of property report that we provide. I'm not entirely certain the same could be true with this because it is a smaller, more isolated study, but we certainly could. If there's at least 30 responses from that property, we could provide a unique report if that was something that they would be interested in. Mm-hmm.
Aaron, remind me real quick, I think you talked me through the math the other day, but remind me real quick, how many total contacts are we needing across partners to develop or get a statistically significant
Great
response?
question. So ideally for this study, for a sufficient sample size, we would want to get 400 responses. If we're thinking about the typical email response rate, which can be around 2 to 3% for a survey like this, maybe a little higher with the right incentive, we would probably want about, I think at least 2,000 to 3,000 emails at minimum. We could still proceed with the analysis if we got 200 responses, but ideally we would want to get 400 responses just to have a sufficient sample size.
Okay, do we know, is this item budgeted? Do we have the budget for moving forward with this study?
I'll grab that, Aaron. So we do have money in the research budget for the project, so this would not be part of something that's not budgeted for research already.
Please.
So can we make a motion to move this forward then? If we want to? So this means Aaron would contact our bed tax collector partners to, I'm not a bed tax, I'm an elected official, so I know my other partners are bed tax collectors, but I would think the partner invitation is better than giving, I don't know about the data security with sharing it with somebody else, but I would think the partners sharing it is probably the better. You know, I get follow-up surveys from trips that I go on, you know, they want to survey. I kind of liked that piece better just personally, but I'll definitely make a motion to move forward with this to start whatever process we need to get with our partners to gather information for the study.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, please. It's my first shot out of the gate on chairing a meeting, so yes,
Having been
sir.
at this for a long time, we send a survey out. We communicate with our guests prior to arrival, while they're here, and when they leave. And we ask every single guest to please complete a survey. We know what our thousands, millions of guests think, where they stay. We know the geography, whether they're at the east end of 30A or near the Destin Bridge. So I would think a bed tax collector should have their finger on the pulse pretty good about their guests. Plus, we threaten them with social media, TikTok videos that if they don't come back, we'll embarrass them in their hometowns. And that helps.
Sorry, is there any other discussion? Okay, Oh, public comment. Sorry, would anybody from the public like to speak?
As far as the cost of the study? I think about 2,000 to 3,000 would be the minimum of. Yeah, the 2,000 to 3,000 is the minimum from based on what we've seen from other studies we've conducted for Walton County.
But if you send out
In past studies where we've done this for Walton County Tourism and we've sent out emails, we've had a higher return than the average. So we've been able to hit our recommended sample size of 400 in previous studies with approximately 2,000 to 3,000 emails. Again, that is the minimum that we would want just to have that threshold. Having more than that would be ideal just to ensure that we're able to.
I think of all the people that come up.
I agree, I'm even.
Seriously, we have to come to the podium. Our internet issue's been up and down, so we definitely got to have you on the volume there.
I think 400 is kind of a joke to get back out of all the people that come to Walton County from county line to county line. I mean, I would consider if I sent out a survey at Edgewater and we have 179 rental units, I would consider if I only got back that percent that I had kind of wasted my time. I'd like to see you either go for a larger percent so we get a larger number back. But to get back 400 visitors out of how many millions come here? I just think 400 is a poor sample. We did a study one time, and all we did the study on was on our logo and changing the logo. Because, you know, you can't brand Walton County. You brand Rosemary, Alice Beach, Sandestin, Hilton, Edgewater, you know, Sandestin, Seaside. It's hard. But when y'all did a study one time years ago, I mean, the percentage was like 300 people that met in Atlanta had ever heard of, how many of those 300 had ever heard of Walton County? Well, Edgewater sent something out to every guest that stayed in our building one summer. I think we sent it out from March 1st through October. and it said, did you visit the beaches of South Walton? Did you visit Destin, Florida? Was Edgewater located in Destin, Florida? Was Edgewater located in Sandestin? Where was Edgewater located? And you checked it and you sent it in. And when you did, I think you got 10% off if you turned it back in, we gave them 10% off their rent if they booked the very next year. Not one person checked beaches of South Walton or South Walton. They either checked Sandestin, nobody checked Miramar Beach because they don't know where that is. They checked Sandestin, or they checked Edgewater, or they checked Destin, Florida, which Edgewater's not in Destin, Florida. So I think to get a big enough sample, I think of all the people that come here all summer, I think the idea is perfect. But to come back and say I spent this much money to hear from 400 people, I mean, I can do the thing for you for Edgewater and get more back than 400. Then you're going to get spending all this money. I think we can all do our own sample. I think Bob can send out from all of Sandestin, everybody that rented from him, because he's got their email addresses. I think he could send it out asking them, and he'll get more back than 400 people telling him if they not coming back to Sandestin, where they're going from there. Just my opinion.
Sure, please.
I think, Ms. Harris, she was just stating that would be the minimum to do the survey. I would hope we have way more than 400 people. That would be my assumption.
You're absolutely correct. 400 is what
You're just saying you're giving an example of the minimum. We don't expect to only get 400 back.
Exactly. We would not cap it at 400. If we got more, we would certainly include all of those.
Sure.
If you wanted to set a higher minimum for us to reach, we certainly can. 400 is the quota we use because that provides us with a 5% error rate at a 95% confidence level. So that's what we would like for a sufficient sample size, but we can certainly go for more. If we get more responses, we will certainly include that in the final analysis.
So was the survey for people not coming back?
The survey would go out to those who have previously visited, and we would have a screener question to determine if they plan to come back or not.
Real quick, I think Tiffany and Suzanne both brought up a good point too. I think something that's important is having some variety within our databases as well, right? I mean, if Bob sends out 1 million emails, right, and gets a great response, well, then all we really understand is why they decided not to come back to Sandestin, right? I think we need to understand the entirety of the county. And
Somebody's not coming back, guess what? They're not coming back, period. We need to go to Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, and ask people, why are you here? I get more return. I'll go.
that's where they are right now.
I know that's where they are. That's why I brought that up.
Can I ask if we added additional emails and responses for the intention of that, would the price then go up?
The price would only go up in terms of the incentive. The overall project price would not. It's just each incentive for each response would add up.
And if you worked with Karen to add in group sales, would that increase the price of the?
No, only the incentive would
Just
increase.
add
The
that,
base
okay.
cost of the $30,000 for the study would not change, even if we got 1 million emails.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sure it varies some, but I certainly don't feel like the 30A customer is in Orange Beach. Now, possibly there are some other customers in our county that would be, but I think the concept has merit. Of course, I was a huge proponent of the teen study, and I think we did learn 3 in 5 teens are making the buying decision, and I think we felt it this year relative to some of our curfews and to Texas not showing up. And, you know, and it gives us statistical data to share with our homeowners as to why certain patterns are what they are. So if I remember where we are in the process, is there any other public comment? So we do have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay,
Thank you so much for your time.
thank you. All right, moving right along, just as a reminder, it is 2:08. So we are closing in, but Matt will bring you up on the TDT-related bills in the legislative session and strategic planning.
And on the TDT biz, I'll keep that incredibly brief, just understanding. I want to share that The session has been extended through June 6th. We do know that for a fact. They will go back to work, if you will, May 12th. So, they're all on break this week. They'll come back to work next week. So, what we're all essentially keeping our eyes on is House Bill 7033. That's the tax package. And that essentially has the language that could divert, the use of TDT tax to property tax revenues, and that would dissolve every TDC in the state of Florida by the end of the year. And it also just mandates a referendum on the TDT every 8 years as the method for continuing that property tax discount. So what we continue to hear is that, at least on the Senate side, there's not a lot of, momentum to see this move forward. We all know session's not over till it's over. So I think, we're continuing to monitor and continuing to have conversations. But really just wanted to put that on your radar and put it out there for the good of the public. And then,
Are there any questions for Matt on that? Okay, thank you.
oh yes, ma'am. Sorry, I'll just jump ahead to the strategic planning real quick and try to be as brief as possible. But so we continue to work on the back end with JLL, sharing data with them and providing the information that they need to get the ball rolling on their side for strategic planning. Scott Beck and Dan Fenton were in town last Thursday and Friday and had an opportunity to, bless them, be in a car with me from north to south to east to west for the better part of a day, and just a good opportunity for them to see the destination with their eyes and become familiar. We had the opportunity for some, very brief introductory meetings with Amy and Mr. Tim and Mr. Brian. So they got to have some conversations, just learn a little bit more about JLL and what they're looking to do, and just answer any questions that, came from those interactions. We also had an opportunity to meet with Commissioner Curry and Commissioner Glidewell just to have some same general conversations, understanding that this is really an introductory opportunity for them just to come and see and meet whoever may have been available, understanding that, what they kind of shared is, everybody on this bench, as well as the community, whether that's through, workshops or stakeholder focus groups or surveys, is going to be involved in this process to, a large extent. So what I really want to touch on today, and I've kind of had this conversation with some of you to a degree, is part of what JLL likes to do is they set up a steering committee that kind of helps, keep the process moving and keep, the wheels on track for this. And ideally, they like to have about 12 to 15 individuals on that steering committee. And that group will meet regularly to provide input, help refine messaging, and kind of act as a sounding board for the project team, which is, myself and the internal leadership team at the tourism department. So, what they've kind of done in the past is a combination of things. You can kind of approach it in different ways. What they will generally say is, you kind of want people who are obviously, well-versed in the tourism marketplace, business owners, people who are key stakeholders in the community. That can be elected officials, it can be appointed officials. You can kind of do it really, in a variety of ways, and depending on how you do it, kind of depends on, how we would approach it moving forward. So really the conversation I kind of wanted to have today with you all is, to see how we thought as the council, we wanted to look at that steering committee, understanding that, if it's a composition of, maybe TDC and BCC or whatever that may be, that does in fact, open every one of those, steering committee meetings, not saying that's a bad thing, to sunshine law and having to be publicly noticed and allow the, public participation in So I think that's one factor to consider. We were talking to the JLL folks this morning, and, you know, what they shared is, you know, that can be good, and that can also, you know, lead to opportunities where, you know, you may have some people who are not willing to, you know, comment or be as active and engaged as they may want to be in that setting, but also understanding that, you know, some of these conversations we're going to be having, you know, are really going to be talking about our competitive advantages and strategies and tactics and things that, you know, we do on the back end that, you know, you may not want, you know, your competitors or everybody else to be available and open to. So I think that's really the conversation I wanted to have with you all, is just to see, you know, how we felt as a collective body we wanted to approach that.
So Matt and I talked about this. So I actually am opposed to having a steering committee that's outside. I think that we should be open to the public for these conversations. I don't, you know, to me, then some of us are out of the loop, and we're going to have to vote yay or nay on the strategic plan. And I think we're appointed for this reason, to help present something, and it's a 5-year plan. This is a huge weight and responsibility, and I think that there's plenty of time within those workshops to steer what we need. And I know historically in the past that they've had the opportunity to sit around a table and talk through that. And I don't want to create redundancy and more staff time for a group that we don't know who all's coming in or what they're discussing, and then we get a piece of paper and have to say yay or nay. I think it's very important for bed tax collectors and for everyone to be able, and community members, to speak their piece out in public.
Okay, anybody else like to comment on that?
I do have one comment, Amy. I have had citizens ask me why we're not doing this ourselves. So I'm in alliance with Tiffany that it was, you know, I've received several phone calls from concerns that we should be doing this ourselves and not a third party handling it. So
Yeah, and so what I would say is, you know, as long as I've been with the tourism department, which is 8 years this month, we've always hired a consultant to do strategic planning. I know that's changed throughout the course of our history as an organization, so it may not have always been that way, you know, but I know as long as I've been here, because JLL worked with us back in, I think it was 15, 16, which predates me on strategic planning, and we worked with a firm called DMO Pros for 2 consecutive strategic planning cycles in my tenure with the department. So like I said, I do believe that's changed historically, but at least in my 8 years here, that's been the way it's been handled.
Well, and I think kind of what I'm hearing, and I really concur on both fronts, but I'm not opposed, time does march on, to us having gone to a professional company, but I do think, in thinking about it, I had not thought about the steering committee, or don't know that I knew about it, but neither here nor there. I may have, Matt, we may have discussed it. I do agree, you're looking at, I think we should be the steering committee. You know, we signed up for these roles for a reason, and not, you know, I said early on, it's very time consuming, and I knew that when I signed up for this. And so I think what we're expressing is that we would like to be the steering committee.
And that, you know, once again, that's why we wanted to have the conversation. I just wanted to give you both sides of what they kind of shared with us. I mean, I think that's ultimately why we're here, is to decide, you know, what you all want to see us do moving forward.
Sure.
When would those meetings begin?
Right. So when we talked to JLL this morning, it was, okay, let's go to the TDC. Let's ask them, you know, what their preference is. You know, we'll have another conversation with them next Thursday to recap, you know, what we discussed today and let them know the direction we want to go. And as part of that meeting, you know, if it is going to be, you know, just the TDC, you know, we will let them know that who those individuals are, and they will start reaching out, contacting those individuals that we identified for the opportunity.
And then follow up, if I may. So have we already set our goals for the strategic planning?
No.
What are future goals and what we're...
No, that's all the things that are going to be worked on. And I do want to mention, just for the good of the public, as part of the strategic planning process, we built into the scope of services 3 public workshops.
Right.
So in addition to all of the other, you know, one-on-one interviews. We're going to do a survey as well to solicit public input, pardon me. We also do have 3 public workshops that we're going to be hosting, and that's for stakeholders, that's for the general, it's for anybody who wants to come, because those are all going to be publicly noticed, open to anybody who wants to attend and share their input, because we really want to garner the input of every industry that's represented in the community, plus the residents as well.
And so thank you, I appreciate that.
Oh,
I
yes,
mean,
ma'am.
by goals, like more of the pillars, right? Of
Sure.
visitation, safety, what some of those may be. And I, just thinking through of us also having a budget workshop, I want us to be really conscious of that, because our strategic plan is going to be then after our budget's kind of set. So just kind of understanding what some of those pillars would be helpful in those discussions.
Great point. Any other comments from the council?
One
Any-
quick one.
Sure.
Matt and staff were nice enough to bring the 2 men that were going to be working on this strategic plan to our offices, and we got to meet and discuss, and I commented how fortunate they were to be asked to do a strategic plan for the Tourist Development Council of Walton County, where we have such a wonderful climate, county, tourism is robust, housing is robust, great place to vacation. I said, could you imagine if you were asked to do a strategic plan for San Francisco with thousands and thousands of name brand hotels have just been vacated, tourism is gone. And so we finished that discussion and we had a wonderful time. And after they left, I looked at the business card of one of the gentlemen. He's from San Francisco. Oh, well.
Okay, do we have any comments from the public regarding the topics Matt just covered, which was the legislation and the strategic planning? Okay, come on up.
So I had an email that you had sent out saying you'd already selected names for the steering committee. You already had a list of people you wanted. So I'm glad to know that y'all didn't just go ahead and select them before, or tell them or notify them they were going to be on it before we talked about the board. Because this board is really important. Y'all are the bed tax collectors. You are the businesses in Walton County. And I think if you have a steering committee, I mean, I can tell you, I've been here a long time. We didn't used to have to pay people to do this. We did it ourselves. Jim Bagby was TDC director. We weren't out paying companies to do this. So the people on this board are the ones you need, but they need to be open meetings, not just a few public meetings. Every meeting they're into, bed tax collectors and the public need to be included. Because you said, you know, y'all will be at and y'all will talk, but then we'll have 3 public meetings. Every meeting that they're at to do this strategic plan, we should all be invited to come and sit around the table. And I thank y'all for volunteering, because it's going to take a lot of time, because I've sat at those tables at the Sandestin Hilton, not yours, but at Sandestin Hilton for days where we discussed it all. And hopefully, I'm sorry we're doing a 5-year plan out front, because we have no idea 5 years from now what it's going to look like. And I'm sorry we're having to pay for it, because I'd like to see that this BCC and the TDC could get together, and we're all smart business people. We run businesses, and that we pretty much could figure out what we need ourselves.
Anybody else? Okay, we are at 2:22. Do you want to go over Commissioner Drake's item?
Yes, ma'am, more than welcome. Commissioner Drake had reached out and he had asked me if I'd be willing to have a conversation with Oxford Economics, Tourism Economics. They're very well known kind of in our space for doing, you know, economic impact studies, research, things of that nature. He asked me if I could just have a call with them and see if they would be able to put together a potential economic impact study related to the PGA Tour. So I had a conversation with them, and they're most certainly capable and willing. understanding that, the intention is to have, the PGA go before the BCC May 27th, and I explained that to them, and they are, certainly able to put together an executive level summary of an economic impact report. The cost for that would be $20,000. So, I wanted to make sure you all had the opportunity to make a decision as to whether or not you felt that was something we needed to do, or, if we just kind of say, thank you for the proposal and let's carry on in the way we already are. Completely up to you all. Just wanted to put that information out there.
That was the discussion about location. Was their study just going to be with what we've discussed, Sandestin, or was this company going to look at possibly a St. Joe golf course?
So they would just look at what the potential impacts would be to Walton County overall, not based on it being a specific location.
Is the determination or the discussion that the BCC is having on May 27th, is that all the details of the event, or is that just whether to allocate the funds to?
Sorry, did I,
Go ahead and say.
well, I think we have to, I think what our motion was that went forward, there was legwork to do. I mean, it was only to enter into discussions relative to time frame, dollar amount, co-sponsor, and some of those other possibilities. So, I mean, I really think that, to answer your direct questions, that's probably up to the BCC, but I would be surprised for them to vote to allocate the money without more detail around what we're actually getting and the location and these other issues, would be my thought on that.
Are they voting on May 22nd up or down on the tournament?
I don't think we can speak on their behalf, but I would not think they would vote on that. Well, maybe.
I think that will be up to.
That agenda item has not been set yet,
Right.
so it could happen, but as of right now, that agenda item in the action has not been set.
Because what I was also going to add in is, since we're on that subject, we're meeting with the BC, when I say we, Charles is going to be in town to meet with all the commissioners, just to have those conversations with them ahead of that meeting, just to answer questions they have as it relates to that project. So I think, what I wanted to also touch in on is, part of the direction you all gave was to have conversations with other folks and see if there were, entities, businesses, whatever it may be, that are willing to, step in and act as a co-sponsor on this event. So I did speak to St. Joe, this is probably about a week and a half ago, and just spoke to them again yesterday, just to kind of understand, what their level of interest was, or if this is something they thought, that they would be interested in participating in. And what they shared with me is that, they would love to be a part of the event in some capacity, but if it was to be the co-sponsor, that's not something that they're, currently positioned to, want to do at this moment. Had a conversation with Bob, and I certainly can let Bob speak for Sandestin if he wants to speak for Sandestin, kind of where, their position is on this right now, or I'm happy to summarize. So I think at this point, Sandestin is, willing to assist in helping, look at co-sponsors, identify co-sponsors. I got some water real quick, sorry. And to be part of that assistance in reaching out, but they would basically, potentially interested in co-sponsorship maybe year 2. Is that? And so that was kind of their position there. I'm in the process of filling out a grant application through Delta to look at some opportunities to get some funding through some programs that they have available. And I've also reached out and left some messages with FPL and Southwest Airlines as well. So that's just kind of where I'm at on the internal side.
Matt, did Commissioner Drake let you know if he would be in favor or was hoping that we would make a motion to spend the $20,000 so he'd have that information to go back to the BCC with?
He just wanted me to bring it up for general input, because that was his intention, was just to have the conversation and see if that's something that the board as a whole thought was a worthwhile avenue.
I think it's worthwhile, but I gleaned something from the PGA rep where we were talking about putting up the 5 million, and then he said, yeah, you all could probably go out and try to sell some sponsorships yourself, but I also picked up on the fact, so are they. So we're liable to find ourselves trying to find some smaller companies, but they, PGA, we could find ourselves having a big PGA co-sponsor for the tournament, Sandestin, so they're selling them too. So we're going to be competing with the PGA on sponsorship. We don't have an exclusive on selling sponsorships. They are too.
My understanding was they'll only accept one other sponsor, so it would become like the Walton County whatever at Sandestin Golf and Beach Resort or at, I don't think because they actually spoke to the importance of, from a branding perspective, actually in a lot of cases, they try to avoid even having one co-sponsor.
Well,
but
I
they
think
did
they'd
say-
rather have a better brand, calling a tournament the Walton County Tournament,
But they do.
Well, I don't,
sponsor-
I'm just,
They do
But a
sponsorships
Sandestin
for-
golf tournament would be, the name but calling a golf tournament, a PGA golf tournament, the Walton County Tournament? I know,
I'm
I
sure
mean,
that's
but
not
that
remotely
was the
correct. What
idea.
was the name gonna be? I
But I'm
can't
sure the
remember.
Walton County Commissioners would be, oh, man, that feels good to me, but it's,
Yeah, I think the example now that you said it is the Walton. it
Walton
was-
County Classic was purely just for example purposes. That was just so we could put something together to have a presentation.
But there will be, they did mention there will be sponsorships, but it'd be for hospitality suites.
Correct.
It would be for
So-
like player week, so
Exactly.
it wouldn't be in competition, we'd just be looking at, yeah. Correct.
Correct.
And
That's
Madam Chair, if I know this topic's going to require a lot of discussion, and I know it
Fair.
warrants it. However, the specific item that Matt's presenting on behalf of Chair Drake is to conduct an economic impact study. I think to the extent we're starting to get into the actual merits and
you,
the
Clay.
method in which the event can be conducted, I think we need to keep it on, do we want to do the economic impact study and look at taking this back up? But I would say if there's a concern that this study would then bypass the TDC and go straight to the BCC for final voter consideration, since it is your money that you're choosing to spend, you could well say that the study needs to be presented to the TDC for its consideration prior to the BCC taking final action.
so,
Thank you, Clay, and we are gonna have to move the discussion forward.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
so my question actually, because I've worked on a dozen studies with tourism economics, and I think very highly of them on different economic impact studies throughout the country. I actually worked hand in hand with Key Data that is located in our area, and they have supplied data for free to offset costs. And so I would really ask that in the future, anytime we do something like this, to try to look at some of those partners to provide and see if we could lower the costs, especially since they're in our neighborhood. And I know Jason, I'll just volunteer him, would always be willing to do that. And we already pay them. They're in our budget for $45,000. So sure they'd be willing to help. So I would ask that we do that moving forward.
Yeah, more than happy to.
Thank you.
Okay, and then, I think it's just important, we have the economic information provided from the PGA. We have, the information that came back from Zender as well as Downs and St. Germain. It would almost, I feel like that one entity, their return is there, the other entity feels the money could be better spent. So that was an interesting read, and we appreciate both those organizations and their transparency with the information they've provided. I think this just comes down to, do we think it merits an additional $20,000 study? And I think it's a little bit, I think we have what we're paying $20,000 for.
I don't think
It's
we
my
need to
humble
do it,
opinion.
yeah.
And I think that's a good point. And once again, we just wanted to present the opportunity. I think based on, the information that we have and the information that we've shared with you all, we may have the answer we're already looking for.
Do we have to take any action on that, or just nope?
This was just
Move
a
forward.
general direction. If it doesn't sound like there's a,
It says request to conduct an economic impact
Right,
study.
so-
If we're going to do it, we need to motion to do it.
but if,
Or if you take no action, we're not going to do it. If you want to vote no and make it clear you're not going to do it, you're welcome to do that as well.
Yeah. I
I'm
think
not
we're fine with
interested,
everybody
yeah.
understanding that the direction and the general feel is it's not the right move at this time. Okay, so we are, I know that my agenda item, I can update later. That is not a huge topic. Jennifer is not here. Tiffany, we moved you to the beginning to our fabulous
Vice Chair,
directors.
if I could, Councilwoman Steele. She really just wanted me to mention, since she was absent, that the BCC had officially recognized May as Art Month, and she just wanted to have that put on the record for the good of the group.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so with that, can we get any other public comment? Okay.
Right now, you next time.
You're welcome to have my seat, Miss Harris, if you'd like. I might be more comfortable back
I will.
there.
I would like, Matt, for you to tell me, when the Black Bear movie contract was done, it was in their contract that they would report back to us monthly on the ROI, what they felt like we'd gotten. And I haven't seen a single report. I just see the Black Bear movies gone to some film festival that's brand new, not to the one we thought it was going to. But I would like all the updated figures on what they spent our $400,000 on. I'd like to see every dime they spent. I'd like to see all their monthly reports, and I would like to know what the ROI of the $400,000 we spent was. So do we have all of that?
Suzanne, we won't get that because that 400,000 was determined a grant. It wasn't a loan, and we didn't, I don't think we
But
put
Clay,
any.
didn't it say in the contract that they would report?
They have
monthly?
reporting metrics, so they are
Have
obligated
reporting
to provide it.
metrics in their contract, and I want to see what they are reporting. I want to see what they've reported based on that contract, because that contract also says that we can do another movie. So before we ever get to discuss that we're giving them $400,000 for another movie, I want to see everything they've done on this movie, because I haven't seen any advertising. I haven't seen one penny come back from what we gave them of our $400,000. That's number one.
Mr. Algren will treat that as a public records request. Make sure you get that to Ms. Roop so she may fill it. Thank you.
Number two, I would like to see us have a line item budget instead of big buckets of money. I don't think any of y'all run your businesses on a bucket of money here and a bucket of money there. I think the county has a line item budget, and I think y'all need to vote that y'all want to have a line item budget next year, so that we don't just say, oh, well, so-and-so decided to do this, so we just took it out of this bucket. And I cannot imagine that we have spent, Tiffany, what you say that we are spending on the chamber, because the chamber went to the BCC and asked for more money for this year, and they were turned down by the BCC for more money. So it looks like now we've become the pocket of money from the chamber. And I think we need to have a real look at what we're spending on the chamber, because I'm sure that every one of y'all can think of a lot of the different things. But at Edgewater, and I've been there 40 years, I don't remember ever, and our computer says, how did you hear about us? Repeat guess, saw it in what magazine, saw it in your ad. I've never had one person say, we saw it on the Chamber of Commerce, and that's why we're calling Edgewater. So I really think we need to look at what we spent on this Chamber of Commerce luncheons and things, and we need to figure out how that money can go into a bucket, especially with us being behind this year. I want to hear about, I know that there was something on Facebook that Matt said we're 40% down. That went all on TV. Now we're 8% down, so obviously we're doing better. I've got the video that said Walton County is 40% down. So whether we're 8% or 10%, we need to be figuring out how to get ahead of the game. But a line item budget requires you to spend the money in that line item, and it requires you to do just what the BCC did. The BCC has a line item for how much they're going to give the chamber, and that's what they give them and no more. So we need to look at all these people we're giving money to, and they need to be in a line item budget. So when we start on the budget workshop, I hope every one of you will think about a line item budget, because I know that Sandestin doesn't just say, oh, well, dear, we're going to take it out of our advertising money and go plant azaleas on our golf course so we'll look like the Masters when the golf course comes. I mean, this is just day-to-day business. Most people's family have a budget, so I think we need that. And I want to thank y'all for having the strategic plan and all y'all volunteering to be on that, because it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work, and I think it will turn out much better, because I was in a panic when I got something that said people had already been selected to be on the committee. So I really appreciate y'all doing it.
Really quick before we close, if you don't mind, for our budget workshop, can we also have, in terms of where we have a budget, what we've actually spent for that year, so we know what is in excess there so we can then suggest what comes down or up. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think
Sure.
I'm sorry, but y'all have got to get, I'm sorry. Y'all have got to get a line item budget.
I agree.
For Brian to get the trucks he needs. I don't care if they need 2 keys or 1 key. I don't care if we get turned down because they want a mat that is a commercial floor mat, which we should have in trucks. But if Brian needs an assistant, then it needs to be in our budget. We do not need Stan Sunday to sit around and say, oh, no, you can't pay this much for an assistant. So you're going to be without an assistant for 2 years because we aren't going to pay this much. We need to figure out how much we're going to pay for Brian an assistant. And if Brian needs more trucks, then we need to buy the trucks and they need to be in a line item budget. And whatever else we need to see to it that we get it for our staff. And we should not have somebody up in North Walton deciding on whether Brian can have how much we can spend on an assistant. That's ridiculous. He's got to have an assistant. It was approved 2 years ago, and we can't. Everybody comes back and says, oh, no, we don't want the job because we're making more than we're already making than you're offering us. And now I've had a girl call me to tell me she was asked to take another job, and we offered her a 7-cent raise, and that wasn't TDC. But nobody's going to go to work for anybody for 7-cent increase in pay.
Thank you. Very fair comments. I think the council understands the importance of the budget workshop and the importance of a line item budget. I didn't really know what that meant otherwise. And so, we obviously want the staff to have the resources that they need to take care of Walton County tourism. So they'll get support from us on that. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you all very much for your time. We appreciate you coming. All right, Baton Rouge bound.
So my email I sent you was generated by.
Already forwarded the other members of the staff going to answer that question for you, so we'll get that.
Thanks, Amy. Drop safe.
Overall, a good meeting, and I think